So government is calling on unemployed young South Africans to apply for the second phase of education assistant posts, which actually opened today. Under the auspices of the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative, almost 300,000 vacancies exist for education assistants and general school assistants. Qualifying applicants must be between the ages of 18 and 35 years and should not necessarily be pursuing any studies or be receiving any form of governmental grants. To give us a bit more details, let's bring in Basic Education Department Spokesperson Mhlanga, who joins us now via our video link. And Elijah, it's always great to chat to you, sir. Thanks so much for making time. People might not remember, so let's perhaps start with the background of this initiative. It was introduced in some respects by the President to try and claw away at South Africa's unemployment rate. There was actually a first phase of hiring. Before we speak about the second phase, how did that go?
Well, it went very well. And good morning, Ayanda. It went very well. We had 800,000 applicants last year in November, and we were able to take the 300,000 that we needed, which means there was a huge demand for opportunities around different areas because we focus on training. It's not just about the job itself, but it's about exposure to employment opportunities with training as a key focus area for us. And we are glad that it was able to achieve exactly what it required. And we were then able to put together another proposal for phase 2, and that's where we are now.
Right. How many of the people who are involved in phase 1 ultimately become absorbed in the system, Elijah? Or is that not really the objective?
Well, that's not the objective, but the good news is that many of them were absorbed, or some of them were absorbed because when they were successful and they were placed in schools, the schools liked them, especially the education assistants who were qualified and had all the documents that are required, such as the SAGE certificate, which allows you to teach in South Africa. A lot of them had those qualifications and those documents. As a result, schools took them. And others, of course, were not that successful, but they got something that they wouldn't have had if the initiative did not exist.
Yeah.
So they went away with some experience, some training, which they would have used elsewhere to get other opportunities.
I wonder if you have the numbers with you. When you say some of them were absorbed, do you have perhaps a proportion, a statistic of how many of the
No.
yeah?
No, we
Okay.
we did not collect that information because the focus of the initiative was to really expose them and give them training and then let them go. Schools use their prerogative to employ those that they felt deserved the chance to be employed as educators.
Right.
It's just not educators. We also have general assistants who do other work as well, which is just general maintenance of the school. So it's quite a variety of skills that are required.
Yeah. All right. So phase 2 is now set to get underway. About 287,000 odd vacancies. How does that process actually work? Do people just apply to the department and get placed, or is there some kind of strategy about geographically where someone lands up?
Well, what's important is that the second phase was based on lessons learned from the first phase. So There would have been mistakes that were made, and those have now been corrected. That's why it took us some time to commence with the second phase. But what is going to happen now is that we are not going to allow any walk-ins. We don't want to create gatherings in schools because there's a huge demand for this. I mean, from the 800,000 response of people that we saw in the first phase, we think that this time around the numbers could be more. So you don't want all those people descending on schools with their CVs. So we have created an online platform where young people can apply. It's sayouth.mobi. If you go there, you are able to create a profile and be able to upload the documents that will be required. And then, you then move on from there.
You speak about lessons learned. I remember some of the issues that made headlines about the first phase was some assistants not being paid in various parts around the country. I mean, take us into your confidence about perhaps what went wrong at that time and if that issue has finally been put behind us.
Yeah, those matters have been resolved. What happened was that this project emerged in a short space of time, and we needed to create systems right across the country to enable the young people to be onboarded and with their correct documents submitted and captured, and then a payment system to be established. And at that time, different provinces chose to use different payment systems, and that resulted in delays. It was not across the country, but in those provinces where they had chosen a different system, delays were experienced. But also you had the first experience of schools having to pay young people who had been placed in their schools, and some decided to do their own thing. They did not pay them the full amounts, and in some provinces they decided to pro rata payment based on the number of days that the young people were able to come to work, or based on their starting date. And all of those things created a problem. So we never had any previous experience of running something like this. So mistakes were bound to happen, but there was a long process of reviewing what went wrong. And this time around, we have fixed all of those things, and we believe that it's going to be smooth. And we also know that provinces had their own initiatives that were similar to the one that DBE was doing. So there was confusion as to which one is not paying. Is it the presidential one or is it the provincial one?
So let's speak about the payment in a bit more detail, Elijah, if we can. Is it still up to the school to pay some of the assistants that finally successfully apply for this, or have you had some kind of consolidated process to try and alleviate sometimes even just the bureaucracy, really? Because I remember sometimes it had to do with issues like paperwork, like people's data wasn't captured in the right places.
Yeah, it was a whole host of challenges, but one of them was the fact that some had not submitted all their documents, and that also caused delays. So we hope that now with the online system, which requires them to submit all the documents there, we shouldn't have a problem in that regard, because you'll have to submit those documents on the first go when you apply. So you need to make sure that you have all your documents in place, so that the error is not on your side, or the delay is not caused by yourself, but rather by the system, if ever there will be any. But schools will still be responsible for paying, because that's where they will be located. But the system has been audited. The Auditor General audited the system, and they gave us recommendations that we are going to apply now to make sure that the money goes into the province and right to the hands of the person who's supposed to get it.
Okay. What is interesting is also that the process itself lasts for about 5 months. I mean, those who are finally absorbed into this initiative, they get to become assistants or general workers, whatever it may be, for 5 months or so. Do you have a mechanism to track what happens after that? Because obviously not all of them get admitted, but I wonder if there's any lost potential for those who have gone through this process, have a new skill, but perhaps meet up with other challenges on the other side that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, the reason for applying an online system is exactly that, so that centrally we are able to know who has applied, who has been successful, who has been placed, where did they have all the documents, and we're able to also monitor them throughout the 5-month period. But there are other opportunities that will come afterwards, because it's a long-term project in terms of it giving you skills that you'll use elsewhere. So there will be a lot of partners that are going to work with us. Some will be absorbed in the education system, others will be absorbed by industry. So the data management system that we have now is going to assist us to track all these young people, because at the end of the day, South Africans will need to know what happened to all this money, were there real benefits, and were they short-term or long-term. And we want to be able to put together a very good report that South Africans will be able to see that indeed the billions that are being invested in this are really worth it.
Yeah, I mean, Elijah, as you and I are speaking, we're having some interaction, for instance, with some people watching. You can imagine the interest that people have because of just how high the unemployment rate is in our country. So with your indulgence, quickly, let me just pose this question we've received from Bonga Zulu on Twitter, who's asking why there's an age limit to this initiative. I mean, I'd mentioned earlier that it's only for those between the ages of 18 and 35.
Well, in South Africa, we say youth is any person below the age of 35 or 35 and not more. So that model is being used right across. So this one is also a presidential youth employment initiative. So it focuses on young people who are not in employment or education and who are desperately looking for opportunities. It is targeted at that particular group.
All right, because, yeah, it's looking specifically at young people in the country. All right, so the application process, just to be clear, is sayouth.mobi online, and I imagine you'll find everything you need on that platform.
Absolutely, and the application starts today.
All right. Cool. I hope it actually does the intended, or rather has the intended outcome. Really appreciate your time and for helping us iron out some of the issues that emerged the last time. Mhlanga speaks for the Basic Education Department. Once again, that website for you, if you are hoping to make use of this opportunity, is sayouth.mobi, but it's only for those between the ages of 18 and 35 because it's targeting specifically youth unemployment in our country. Once again, Elijah, thanks very much indeed.